We shall win.
Hey guys, Veebat here with another V-Plays, taking a look at the Tier 7 Typhoon. So this is one of a long line of multi-role fighters and new multi-role fighters that are coming to the British line. We start out with the Hurricane 1, get the Hurricane 2, the Tornado, the Typhoon, and then after this is the Tempest. So you're just getting a whole bunch of storm named aircraft to fly, but multi-role aircraft in general are going to have a very particular play style. Not a lot of people have mastered it, but it does take a bit of time to really understand the nuance of it. And the way I see a multi-role fighter is that it is a zone flipper. It is not meant to be fighting in dogfights. It's really meant to drop those munitions on a site, then turn those guns upward and start taking out some of the air defense aircraft that are at that site, or if there's a player there and you can kind of catch him unawares, you can engage with those cannons at a pretty decent range and cause some serious damage. And if it looks like they can outturn you, you can use your boost to get away from the engagement and come back in for another boom and zoom pass, or you can turn with them if it's a heavy fighter that thinks he's going to duel. Now both of these bombs have enough of a blast radius with Demolition Expert to be able to take each one of those 10 sites. I like using the bombs on this aircraft because they have such a massive blast radius. The max altitude of this aircraft, it wants to be below 4,000 feet for optimal range or optimum altitude, but you can see here I'm easily able to climb up to over 7,000, although I'm starting to lose some energy here, and I can actually stay airborne. I'm even increasing in speed. The nice thing about this aircraft is it has a really good acceleration and it has a very low stall speed, so it allows me to be able to maintain my flight characteristics and keep those guns on the enemy even at higher altitudes. So I'm not limited to just below 4,000 feet, where some aircraft, once you get above the optimum altitude, the engine power drop off is so drastic it just ruins the aircraft's ability to perform. So that guy just rocketed me. Kudos to you, Slow Mo Joe. What a great shot. He is flying the exact same aircraft as me. He does have this spec'd out. As you can see, he is a specialist in that airframe, so he obviously either knows what he's doing or has been playing it long enough to get a pretty good understanding of how to use that aircraft, or at least equip it properly. So we managed to flip that zone, so I don't mind that Slow-Mo Joe just killed me there, and now I see another site that I want to take. I always try and focus down the offensive sites. So if I can get those sites, it means that we're going to constantly be putting the enemy on a defensive, because we are flipping their zones with an automated attack system here. So I'm going to have my own bombers, I have my own rockets attacking other sites, and they either have to flip those zones back or they have to keep killing my friendlies in those zones to slow us down. Now that yak came in, destroyed my ally, or it might have been an air defense aircraft that killed him, but I take out that one aircraft that was low health, caused some pretty decent damage on the Yak 9, but I want to focus him because when it comes to an enemy player, even if it's a bot, it actually gets more capture points than it would be if you just killed an air defense aircraft. So that allowed us to be able to flip the zone completely over. Bear in mind, the same works for the enemy. So if the enemy kills you inside of a zone, they also get a lot of points. So always try to not die in a zone if you know that you're going to put yourself in a situation where you're probably not going to survive the engagement. Go ahead and get out of there as quickly as you can. Now the mistake I'm making here is I'm going towards the airfield. There isn't much of an option of one way or the other. I figured I'd give my team a hand here and put some damage into some unaware aircraft. I made sure that P-51 had no idea I was coming, and I put some good damage into him. Here's Slow-Mo Joe again. I'm climbing into the vertical. You can see he's obviously up over 6,000 feet and is doing just fine. I have some good shots going into Slow-Mo Joe, but the Yak 9U came up from underneath me, and with his massive hub-mounted cannon was able to just rip the wing right off my aircraft. It's alright though, I'll be able to spawn back in 22 seconds, so we still have both of the offensive zones, and the enemy is making a critical mistake here. They may be getting a lot of kills, they may be dogfighting over this center site and kind of keeping it in their control, but what does that even do? It gives them a spawn point, sure, and they might be able to keep maintaining this area, but they're not capturing any other sites. So they're not stopping the continued onslaught of rockets and bombers inbound on that airfield. So they might be able to hold it for a while, but they're not going to be able to hold it forever. So I decided I'm going to go back in. I wanted to try and help out my ground attacker that's in the center zone, and I'm going to try and focus one of these specialized aircraft, and I let people know that I'm doing that by putting my cursor over the enemy and hitting F4 in order to indicate I'm attacking this, what is that, tanker scout, but I realized quickly that tanker scout isn't the major threat. Typhoon's going to be the major threat because he's an equal aircraft to me. I know what his strengths are compared to me. So I decided I'm going to do a bit of a bomb trap here. I drop my bombs in my path, I hammer down on the throttle, and I try to maintain a little bit of upward, downward, side-to-side movement. And now that P-39N Airacobra, which I know is not that fast, a great turning fighter, but is not fast, is never going to be able to catch my aircraft. So I go ahead and get the heck out of Dodge, and I wait until he starts to turn off, and then I start to double back around and maybe do another pass on him since he thinks I'm gone now. But here comes the enemy player in his heavy fighter, decides he's going to put a good hit on me. But he's low health, and these cannons really can reach out and hit you, and this aircraft is pretty fast, so I don't really care that he's in a heavy fighter. I can still get my guns to bear on him. A Corsair is a little bit better at turning than I am, but I do feel confident that Eric the bot is not paying attention, and I will take out the ground attacker as he closes on my position. But now I want to put those guns on the F4U4, and I'm being very careful with my trigger discipline here so I don't overheat the guns, and just kind of peppering away at the enemy until I can take him out. That gets us a grade 3 because we're defending sites, we're getting capture points, and that's really where you start to build up those points for this airframe. Now you'll see I am far surpassing the point score of my own teammates as well as the enemy at this point, but the enemy across the board has way more personal points than my team does, but they're losing. Why are they losing? Because they focus that airfield. The airfield isn't that much of an advantage. The only time the airfield's an advantage is when all the rest of the sites are garrisons. So we managed to get grade 2 multi-role fighter, and this is pretty much the end of the match, and I probably would have had the opportunity to kill that P-39N. It would have been a very easy attack on him. I always put up a GG. It was a good game, and I think everybody tried their best to try and get a win out of that fight. But without any further ado, let's go to the end plates, and then we'll talk a little bit about the airframe and how I've kind of set it up in order to optimize its effectiveness in combat. In general, a multi-role fighter is really going to be meant for flipping capture zones, so that's exactly what we did. We used our munitions, we engaged the enemy when we needed to, and used those guns to take out air defense fighters to really flip those capture zones. So you can even see here we killed 10 aerial targets, 5 were enemies, and then we put some damage into air defense aircraft, but we never actually destroyed any of those, and we did kill some ground targets. So most of our capture points we achieved were from killing enemy aircraft for a total of 420 capture points. And we were destroyed twice, and unfortunately we had a little bit of downtime as we waited for our aircraft to regenerate, but it still put us at the top of the leaderboard here with a solid 11,000 on the score. And if you compare that to everybody else on the team, we had a substantially higher score than everybody, all the other bots, including players on our team, and the enemy team technically outscored us, but most of what they were doing was fighting over that air base in the middle and not doing what they should have been doing, which was taking that military base, because getting that rocket offensive feature going is really where you're going to tip the scales. But enough about tactics. Let's talk about the aircraft a little bit more in detail, taking a look at the upgrades. This is what I was referring to in the earlier stage of the video. It looks like a lot. You got all these Browning machine guns on here, and they look kind of screwy on the wings here. Just a whole bunch of holes in the front of the wing. But they have such short range that as you bump up even to just the Mark II Hispanos here, you're going to get a massive jump in effective fire range, well over 2,000 feet. And that's really going to allow you to reach out and touch people, because you don't want to get that close in this aircraft, because as soon as they realize you're there, they can turn on you and engage. Your advantage is going to be catching people by surprise, killing them outright, and then using the speed available to outrun the aircraft you can't outmaneuver, and those that you can't outrun, you then outmaneuver them like a heavy aircraft. And then just to add a little bit of icing on the cake, there is the Mark V Hispanos, which is actually the same Top Guns that you'll get in the Tempest at Tier 8, but more than enough for effective fire capability here, because you can reach out even further and get some better reach on these guns. So do highly recommend focusing getting this airframe upgrade as soon as humanly possible. It's going to be, I think it's 18,000 experience, so get on it, get that thing researched, and then get these Hispano Mark IIs. Otherwise you're just going to be hurting the entire time. The next thing I actually really recommend getting, and maybe this will be your first upgrade, it's only 6,000 points, but you can get these 500 pounders. They reload in only 60 seconds, so I'll do my little drop down here. You can see for the resupply time it's going to be 60 seconds to get these bombs back, and they do a total of 9,800 damage between the two bombs. However, if you were to mount the rockets, you'll see you'll actually decrease the overall damage, and the resupply is the exact same. I prefer to use the bombs because I know where they're going to go, I know that they're going to cause the most damage, and they have a large splash radius able to affect an entire ground site. So when I dropped those 2 bombs on those tent facilities, it hit every single corner of that site and was able to flip that capture zone. The engines are just going to make it that much better. Unfortunately, these engines do not translate over to any other aircraft, so they're just to make this aircraft a little bit more speedy. And since we don't have this line fully unlocked, we don't know which portion of this track is going to lead you to the Tempest. Is it just the airframe? Is it going to be the engines? I don't know. And we'll talk about the Tempest at a later date, which is also a fantastic aircraft. Even stock, it was a pleasure to fly, so you do have something to look forward to as you continue grinding down the candy cane path. When it comes to equipment that I put on the airframe, I might change this out. I kind of prefer going with polished skin because I want to work with the strengths of the aircraft in order to make it that much more capable in its role. If I try and augment the weaknesses of the lack of maneuverability that multi-roles typically have against kind of turn and burn fighters, what you're going to find is that when I go up against those aircraft and I try to run away, because I'm never going to be able to outturn them, no matter how many modules I put on here, I'm not going to outturn the Kai 84s and all that. What I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to work with my strength, which is the ability to disengage, and polished skin is going to be what we're looking for instead of the lightweight wing frame. And then of course having good gun sights. Any aircraft that's going to be engaging in air-to-air engagements needs to have good aim on those cannons or machine guns in order to make sure you're getting the most connection with those shots, because there is a degree of auto aim in the game. I will always run universal ammunition over any of the other options because I don't believe in carrying any of these premium ammos, because why would I pay gold to put ammunition on my aircraft, especially if I have auto resupply on, because I'll end up spending gold, and that's not something I want to do either. I do have emergency control services on here. It's nice to be able to get the tail back and operational, and then first aid dressing. If you stay with this aircraft and you end up specializing and know that you're going to be able to put on an outboard weapon add-on, I always prefer with going with a pylon that allows you to be able to decrease the reload time and get those bombs back up even faster, and then you'll also be able to put on the consumable for increasing the damage and blast radius of your munitions, which is going to be a nice little benefit. And we can even bump up the engines a little bit here, maybe put an engine restarter on here, maybe put a cooler on it so we can get that boost back, and then I prefer to use the decreases the overall boost but increases the efficiency, because I feel like you're not really taking anything away. Yeah, I lose the overall time on the boost, but every second of boost is going to be that much more powerful, so it's really just putting all of your effort into getting the maximum performance out of that boost. So I see it as being a very minor loss compared to any other module, which is going to have, such as this lightweight wing frame, increased chance of critical damage to my wings and aircraft hit points drop. That really sucks. Just to get a little bit roll maneuverability and some better maneuverability in turns. So, but again, rolling on to pilot skills. Since I do use my multi-roles as kind of a pseudo ground attacker, and I'm getting those munitions back all the time, I want to use Demolition Expert. I will go with Demolition Expert. I would go with it second. And the reason I'd go with it second is that you have a cannon fighter here, so you're really going to want Marksman 1 on there as soon as possible. Get Marksman 1, then Demo Expert, and then once I get this third skill, I actually transferred this crew from my Blenheim. I'm going to go ahead and get Marksman 2 in order to give it that much more of a punch. The nice thing about the Tempest, besides this awesome paint job that comes from going down the candy cane path over here, is the fact that this aircraft has enough power available that even though it's meant to fight below 4,000 feet, it does have the capability of really hammering down on the boost and climbing up to those high altitudes like you saw me do in that match. So you can take out bombers, you can take out heavy fighters if you really need to. And I like having that versatility, so I think this line is going to be a big benefit for those of you who like multi-role aircraft, because it's really going to emphasize all the strengths that we like about those aircraft. It doesn't carry a lot of munitions, but they reload relatively quick, and the guns are plenty powerful with a great speed behind the airframe. So, as always, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.